surprise me because I think about the world that our Rabbi Yeshua, the guy that some people call Jesus, the world that he wanted to see. And we still aren't there. 2,000 years later, we still aren't up to loving our enemies. We're still not up to giving when people beg. We're still not up to healing the sick. We're still not up to feeding the hungry. Some of us are. Some of us are doing the work. Okay, so I don't want to take away from the really wonderful things that a lot of really amazing people are doing in this world. And some of them are sitting right here in this congregation. And I am blessed to know you. But imagination is not going to get the job done. Unity's fifth principle says knowledge of these truths, and it's kind of referring back to the other four, right? Knowledge of these truths is insufficient. We must live the truth we know. This Labor Day weekend, I was thinking about work, right? Because we are honoring workers and all of the economic and social progress that our workers have made over the years. And there's been much, right? We have a weekend, right? That's progress. The ratio of weekend to week might be a little out of balance for some of us. But our workers have done a great deal. And that's, out in that larger world. But there is a lot of work for us to do in our inner world that we can take out there and help heal that world and create the kind of world that John Lennon and Jesus and so many other enlightened human beings have described to us, have imagined for us. So the question then becomes, well, Reverend Charles, what do we do? What's the work? What are we supposed to be doing here? So there are a lot of different ways of peeling this onion, a lot of different ways of taking bites out of the elephant. I think back to my first semester in seminary. And, well, it should have been my first semester in seminary. The first semester in the actual seminary curriculum. I kind of jumped in a couple semesters late because I had been deployed. But in that first semester, they teach us a class called self-awareness. And that is as good a place for us to begin our work as any. It may be the place for us to begin, because until we become aware of what we're actually thinking and the fact that we are not our thoughts. I am not my thoughts. Let's affirm that together. That's a good one. I am not my thoughts, okay? Until we can free ourselves, unchain ourselves from our monkey mind, we're going to be stuck. We're not going to have the ability to make real progress in consciousness. Eckhart Tolle, who some of you have read some of his works, I'm sure, A New Earth or The Power of Now, he had kind of an epiphany one night. He had been in tremendous depression and pain. And he got to the point where he almost had to break, or he would have been broken. And he describes what happens like this. I couldn't live with myself any longer. And in this, a question arose without an answer. Who is the I that cannot live with the self? What is the self? I felt drawn into a void. I didn't know at the time that what happened was the mind-made self, with its heaviness, its problems, that lives between the unsatisfying past and the fearful future, collapsed. It dissolved. The next morning I woke up and everything was so peaceful. The peace was there because there was no self, just a sense of presence, or beingness, just observing and watching. And he went on to write that the most significant thing that can happen to a human being is the separation process of thinking and awareness. And that awareness is the space in which thoughts exist. He says that the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. That's a great place to begin our work, when we can learn to separate, to unhinge our awareness from our thoughts. Then we can really start to figure out who we are and what our stuff is. Okay? So one of the ways that we're going to do that is through meditation. Now, this is a real key concept when we first begin meditating. What a lot of people attempt to do is shut their mind down, and it gets very frustrating because, our thoughts want to keep rolling and rolling and rolling and trying to suck us in, and get us riding along with them, when what we're attempting to do is kind of be on the riverbank and watching the little, thought sticks float down the stream. But what I will say is this: it can be vitally important to be aware of what is in the thought sticks going down the stream. Right? We don't want to get sucked into them, but knowing what they are trying to grab us and pull us into, kind of knowing the color and the texture of what is going on in our thoughts, gives us a real clue as to what's up with us, what our stuff is. Are we generally thinking positive thoughts? Are we generally thinking negative thoughts? Are we generally happy with ourselves? Are we generally eating ourselves a new one? Right? Are we at odds with the universe, or are we at one with the universe? Do we feel like a victim of life, or do we feel like a student of life? Right? It is absolutely vital that we have some understanding of what the content of our mental landscape is. And we can't know that if we don't separate ourselves a little bit from it, if we don't pull out of the thought streams. Like, pull out. If we stay in there, we'll end up going down thought rabbit holes and, getting into, like, winning old arguments that we lost, right? Or predicting new arguments that we're going to win, instead of living right here and right now, in this moment, and finding the joy, the peace, the love, the kingdom of heaven that is right here, right now, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Right? So the very first thing we have to do is learn to live in our awareness rather than inside one of the gazillions of thoughts that our mind is creating. Amen? Okay. So once we've done that, and how do we do that, Charles? Well, okay, really about the only way that I have found effective long-term is regular meditation. Now, for some of us, meditation may look differently, okay? So I have some friends who do their meditation in yoga, right? In fact, they do yoga to get to the meditation, right? There's a lot of people in Alabama don't realize they meditate, right? They think they're just resting at the end of yoga, right? But the whole point of that 70 minutes of torture is to get to that 5 minutes of meditation. Except most of the teachers here are smart enough not to call it meditation, or, good Christians wouldn't do it. So what they do is they hide that word in Sanskrit, and they say, it's Shavasana. And after 70 minutes of torture, 5 minutes of Shavasana is like, oh, okay? But it's meditation. All right? Sometimes Laura and I run around East Lake Park, and I see a lot of people meditating with a line in the water. I don't know if they ever catch anything in that lake. If they did, I wouldn't recommend eating it. But they seem pretty chill, right? Just kind of sitting there, watching that line. It's all good. A lot of people who enjoy being outside, being in nature, going out to Oak Mountain or any of the other places around here where you can walk a trail, climb a mountain, sit by a waterfall, be one with nature. And then there are, some folks that get into a meditative state when they run or row or exercise in some way. So there are several different ways that we can do it, but it's our job to begin a regular practice of it, whatever way works for us, and then to actually focus it in the direction of becoming aware of our thoughts, knowing what their content is, kind of maybe cataloging that for later because we got some other work to do, right? And being able to let them flow without jumping on, right? We don't need to jump into that river. We don't need to grab hold of those sticks. We need to be able to observe at peace, allowing what is to be what is. As Eckhart Tolle points out, it's not the situation that causes us suffering. It is our mind's response to the situation and our awareness's inability to disconnect from the mind that causes the suffering. Now, I do not mean to discount pain. I do not mean to discount loss. I do not mean to discount grief. We have things that very honestly cause us tremendous pain. We lose things that mean the world to us. We spend time in grief, and that's understandable. And if that pain or that loss or that grief is where we center our awareness, we can lose ourselves in it. It seems like every day I read about someone who has killed themselves. It seems like every day I read about another overdose. Those are both responses to pain that someone could not separate from. Right? We can do this work. And we don't have to let our pain become our master, our jailer, and our executioner. We don't have to. Now, once we've identified a thought in our thought stream that is not a helpful thought, in Unity we teach the use of a couple of tools that will help us with that. And those tools are denial and affirmation. Now, whatever that thought may be, I'm not going to be in denial about having the thought because that would be disingenuous. I'm actually having that thought. And that thought may be based on a factual circumstance of my life. All right? Easy example. I have $12.37 in my checking account. Right? So if I have the thought that I don't have enough to get through the month, right? That's a thought that I'm actually having, and it's based on a fact that there is currently $12.37 in my checking account, and I got a whole lot of month left. All right? But we can deny the power of that fact over our experience. Lack consciousness has no power over me. Let's say that together. Lack consciousness has no power over me. God's abundant supply is available to me now. And that's the affirmation that we follow that denial with. God's abundant supply is available to me now. Right? So, what we do is we find a thought that is not serving us. And the work is to gently brush it aside, not to deny the factuality of the underlying circumstances, but to deny their power over us, to deny their power over our awareness, over our consciousness, and denying their power to pull us out of the kingdom of heaven and place us in a hell of our own making. Amen? Right? We just push that aside. Now, just like when you're at the beach and you dig a hole, right? You dig a hole at the beach, what happens? Something smushes back into it, fills it up, right? Unless you put something in there. So the idea is once we dig that hole, right? Once we deny that thought that is not helping us, we then lay in an affirmation. Okay? So in that case, if I say lack consciousness has no power over me, God's abundance is available to me, or God's supply is available to me here and now. We change our reality by changing our thinking, which is essentially Unity's third principle. And it's not enough to know that principle. We have to actually do the deal. We have to do the work. The 12th step of 12 steps that started with Alcoholics Anonymous starts with the words, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. You know, and for us, the spiritual awakening is the result of the work that we do. Right? So meditation is kind of a baseline. If you're not doing any of the other work that I teach at this church, right? If you're just showing up on Sunday, singing the songs, having some fun, you know, loving on some people and feeling better when you leave, that's great. And there are souls in peril. And this stuff, if you do it, will change your life. I want you to have that. I want you to have it all. I want us all to live in the kingdom of heaven right here, right now, together. Amen? All right? But if you haven't started doing the work any other way, just start meditating 5 minutes a day for me, okay? It's a start. You know, and I know that life is busy. Believe me, I know that life is busy, right? I should show you the schedule, the 7-day schedule from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. that my lovely bride made up for me. Some members of my staff cracked up because every place where it says relaxation, it says relaxation/housework. So I get it. Life comes at us, you know, at 100 miles an hour and it doesn't quit. That's why you need meditation, people, right? Even more, it's like the old Buddhist joke. You know, the student comes to the master and says, "Master, how much should I meditate?" And the master says, "Well, you should meditate at least 30 minutes a day." And the student says, "Master, I don't have that much time." And the master says, "Well, then you need to meditate an hour." Right? The tougher life is, the more we need meditation. You know, when I've been deployed a couple of times, and it's hectic, you know, when you're overseas. And, you know, I would regularly easily be doing 12, 14-hour days, but I would somehow find time, whether it was, you know, setting my alarm a half an hour earlier, or, you know, maybe not going to the chow hall for lunch and just running back to my little hooch and, you know, drinking a shake or something. And I would meditate. And it got me through. I mean, I remember I was interviewed by some folks towards the end of my first deployment. And before the people called from the States to interview me, the the civic affairs sergeant was kind of warming me up and throwing me some softballs. And he says, "So Chief, how did you get through this?" And I just said, "Meditation." It just popped right out of me. I don't think that was what he was expecting, but it is absolutely the truth. And I found that the more under stress I feel, the more my shoulders want to meet my ears, the tighter things feel around here, the more I need to just say, hey, I got to meditate for a little while, and just make some time and go do it. It's amazing what it will do. All right? So we start this baseline of creating an awareness that is not the slave of our thoughts. Okay? And we kind of get an idea of what they're up to. What are you guys doing over there? I got your number, right? I'm going to deny and affirm, and we're going to change the looks of some of those sticks floating down our stream over time, right? And eventually, the more and more time goes by, the more we meditate, the more that our awareness catches our thoughts at what they're up to, right? And the more we deny the stuff that doesn't work for us and affirm the things that do, the cleaner that river is going to look and feel, right? And we're going to be able to live in the awareness of now, the way that Eckhart Tolle talks about, and so many other people. So, once we get to that point, right? Once we get to the point where we're sort of polling our thoughts and finding out what's in there, what we will find is that we're going to have some things against some things. We may have stuff against God, right? How could you let this happen, God? Right? We may have things against institutions. We will certainly have things against other people. And if you're like me, you probably have the most things against anybody against yourself. I know I do. So the thing to do is to identify what those things are and start letting that stuff go. Okay? We have to do some serious forgiveness work. Now, if you were with us a little earlier this year, we went through the forgiveness work that Desmond and Umfo Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa, and his daughter kind of extracted and codified in their work with the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. All right? So, pop quiz. Let's see how many people actually were here and paid attention. Does anybody remember what the first of the 4 steps of forgiveness is? Anyone? A little louder. First step is telling your story. Right? You tell your story. Okay, so we've told our story. Now what's the second step? We identify the hurt. We name the hurt. Right? I tell my story. I name my hurt. In the third step, I actually do the forgiveness. Now, how do I know when I've actually forgiven? I love being able to reteach the same things because it makes it easy for me, right? I know that I have forgiven when I stop viewing, when I pull back and I stop viewing myself as the victim in the story, the victim of whatever it was, and I start looking at it as something I learned through. And there will be a tipping point. It's something I learned through. It's something I survived. It's something that I'm stronger now because that happened to me. Wasn't any fun, And I really think whoever that was I'll say this politely, a real jerk, right? But I sure learned something from that, whatever it was. And then finally, if we're actually talking about a someone, we decide whether or not we want to release, or renew the relationship. Okay? So we go through those steps, telling our story, naming the hurt, forgiving, releasing, or renewing. Now, when we are doing it with ourselves, we don't really have, well, we don't have a healthy choice to release or renew the relationship. We're kind of stuck with ourselves. Right? But if we start with ourselves, if I am, kind of, my awareness has been taking a look in my thoughts and saying, ooh, that's something I need to forgive myself for, and oh, that's ugly. I really need to forgive myself for that, right? And I'm going to have a little forgiveness list, right? So I'm going to make a list of all the things that I need to forgive myself for, and for each of those things, I'm going to tell the story about it, right? And I'm going to name the hurt. Why did I hurt myself? How did I hurt myself? What was the hurt specifically, right? And then, finally, I'm going to have to say, Charles, I forgive you for that, right? You're not just a screw up. You came here to learn that people don't need half a gallon of whiskey every couple days, right? Or whatever it might be. And I go on down through until I have cleaned out my issues with me. Because really, until I've cleaned out with my issues with me, I'm going to have a tough time cleaning out my issues with you guys, right? So once I've done the forgiveness work with myself, then I'm going to do the forgiveness work with the people in my life. I'm going to make another forgiveness list, right? Okay, so who all do I need to forgive? And again, as we learned back when we were studying the book of forgiving, just because I forgive somebody doesn't mean I invite them back into my life. Those two things are not equal, right? I can release a relationship, even if it's with somebody in my immediate family, if that's what it's going to take for me to be sane, and to have a healthy boundary. I'm allowed to have healthy boundaries. You're allowed to have healthy boundaries. We are all allowed to have healthy boundaries. Doesn't matter who they're with. And they don't have to like that, and that doesn't mean you didn't forgive them. Right? And then after that comes the tough part. We may have to figure out, whose forgiveness do I need? And then we go out and we ask for it, right? And we're perfectly okay with whatever the response is. Somebody says, hey, dude, sorry, you blew it, I can't forgive you, or, oh, I can forgive you, but I don't ever want to see you again. That's fair. I'd take that. I'd take, hey, I forgive you, but, I don't want anything to do with you. Well, actually, I take that all the time. As a minister, it's okay, it's part of life. And even if somebody can't forgive us, if we've made the effort, if we've said, hey, I want to make amends, right? We can at least get that out of our thought stream, right? We're going to clean that stream up. And when it comes to forgiving God for all the things that happen, some of the work that we have to do is we have to let go of the idea of God as some dude that sits there, pushing the yes or no button, pushing the live or die button. Some dude that's making a choice about everything that happens in our lives. We can all define God in a way that works for us. We don't have to live by somebody else's definition of God. You don't have to live by mine, right? For a long time, I self-identified as agnostic because the God that I'd been taught growing up was not a God I could believe in. I wasn't sure what was out there, but I was for sure did not believe in that dude, the one that had been described to me in the church that I went to growing up. Today I define God as the universe, everything in it, all that lies behind it, and the laws by which it operates. And it's still possible to get mad at that thing, but it's a little easier not to take things personally, if that makes sense. Right? Sometimes I need a personal God. Sometimes if I'm, feeling in pain, or if there's someone dear to me that's got some kind of issue and I want them to be taken care of, I say, God, please help so and so. That's okay. But living life as a victim of life's circumstances is not helpful to me today. I don't think it's helpful for any of us. There's a class that gets taught from time to time, and its subtitle is, it's called The Q Effect, and it's the art and practice of living life with nothing and no one against you. And if we can get that the universe is not against us, even if it feels very much in this moment like it is, that helps us in the big picture forgiveness, right? But it always helps to begin within. I forgive myself first. I forgive my other people, right? I get forgiveness from other people, and then maybe, I forgive everything for this crazy life that I was born into, and for all these things that I'm apparently here to learn that are really painful. But I'm learning, and what has happened in later years has been amazing, So it's doing this deal, right? It's doing this deal. Finally, I'll just leave you with something really quick, and you can learn a whole lot more about that on Wednesday nights, starting this Wednesday, right? So far I've been kind of talking about a way of being. And then there are some things to do in there, right? Like there's meditation, there's doing forgiveness work. But the final piece of my regular program, and I probably should have made this a 2-Sunday talk, is living by the 4 T's. That's tithing of my time, my talent, and my treasure. Daily word today was faith. There is no better way to flex our faith muscle than by tithing. Because when we tithe of our time, what that means is I'm going to spend time in prayer, meditation, spiritual classes, reading, doing those things that bring me into oneness with God. What I'm saying is I have enough time. I have enough. I have enough faith that all my stuff that's got to get done will get done, and I'll have time to spend with God today. When I tithe of my talent, that's when I give of my own talents, whatever they are, freely to someone without any hope or desire for recompense. I'm just going to volunteer and do something to help another human being or a group of human beings out, not expect anything in return. And that's again saying, you know what? I have more than enough. Here's some of my good stuff. I'm going to give it to you. Right? And finally, tithing of our treasures, when we, take 10% of what we make and we give it to where we are spiritually fed. For some people, that's tough, right? I know it was tough for me the first time I did it. I still do it. And that's been a lot of years. And it's my favorite check to write, every week. I love doing that because it has changed my relationship with the universe. I know, and I know that I know that I know that there is enough. And I know that because I've been exercising my faith muscle for a long, long time. Right? So starting this Wednesday evening, Paige Klein, who's in the back, wave at all the nice people, Paige. Paige is going to be facilitating our 4T prosperity class. So if you have been feeling, challenged prosperity-wise, or if you would just kind of like to, up the way that you were living your life and spend a little more of that time with God and other people, I can't recommend it enough. I've been both a student and a facilitator a couple times for the 4 T's, and it is life-changing. And I'm not making that up. It really is life-changing. So starting Wednesday evening at 6:30. All right? So becoming aware, cleaning out our thought stream, doing our forgiveness work, and tithing of our time, talent, and treasures. That is the work that is ours to do. And the reward at the end of that is far better than a paycheck or a gold watch or a 401k, because what it is the ability to live in here without a huge argument and to live in the kingdom of heaven that is among us, that is right here and right now.